Tonight the music seems so loud. I wish that yeah, it's not a Valentine's Day video. I know you guys were expecting a video for Valentine's Day, but I actually did a collab with the Goose Junkies podcast yesterday for a Valentine's Day special episode. And we did a Valentine's episode from Haunting Hour and Are You Afraid of the Dark? So my romantic side is already taken care of. Today we rocking the pimp outfit and we talking about Fear Street, because Fear Street be out here pimping. There is a little bit of romantic stuff in this book that I'm about to cover, but it's not the main point of the story. But it gives me a little bit of leeway, all right? So anyway, talking about Fear Street, and this is actually the very first Fear Street book that I ever read. This is not the first Fear Street book I covered on this channel. I actually covered Ski Weekend before this, which is the second only Fear Street book I ever read. And that one was really good. I enjoyed it. It was intense. It had an intense villain. It had an intense situation. Kind of similar to Stephen King with Misery, where you get locked up with a stranger who may or may not be psychotic. It's your only kind of isolation and the way you can be safe, but it ends up not being that safe. But here, this story is more so kind of average. It's more so a typical teenage thriller. And I have to say that the first two acts are quite good, but then the third act kind of falls off and becomes too repetitive, and it felt like Stine fumbled. This could have been another really good Fear Street book, but it just felt like Stine had the recipe, and then he just didn't know what to do with the third act, and it fumbled, which is why I didn't want to start off my Fear Street reviews on a more so mid note. I wanted to start on a more positive note, so this is fitting for a second review. But yeah, let's talk about this Fear Street book. Enough rambling. Well, on to more rambling, but this will be organized rambling. You get what I mean. So we're talking about the third book in the Fear Street series, which is Fear Street: The Overnight. And the plot synopsis of this book is basically about the main character named Della O'Connor. And she has this friend group that's a part of this high school outdoors club. The friend group includes Maya, who's been her best friend for a while. She's this very sort of reserved, kind of nerdy girl with very conservative parents. You know, they always make sure she's safe, kind of keep her out of trouble. You have her ex-boyfriend, Gary. They recently broke up with each other. However, they might still have feelings. You get that idea that they still sort of like each other. And they may try to be making amends, even though Gary's seeing another girl. Which brings on to the other girl in their friend group, whose name's Suki. Suki is this goth, kind of emo-looking girl who's kind of the local school hoe. She kind of gets passed around like a baton from what the main character says. That's not what I'm assuming, but that's what the characters say, all right? And her name is Suki, which you're not slick, Stine, you know. Suki sounds like sucky, and yeah, it kind of fits her character. But she basically makes moves on Gary. She's more so kind of this rebellious type of girl who's a part of the high school outdoors club too. You have Pete, who's this very preppy, very nice, very kind, kind of picture perfect guy. Who may or may not have feelings for Della, which she doesn't know if she reciprocates yet or not. And then you have this obnoxious class clown named Ricky. And Ricky is this very over-the-top, loud, you know, sort of class clown character, makes a big joke, thinks he's funnier than he actually is. But it makes him charming in a way, just how ridiculous he is. And that's the friend group of this high school outdoors club. So you got this diverse group of teenagers. And essentially, as a part of this outdoors club, they have this overnight trip that's being planned upcoming, which is going to take them to Fear Island. Fear Island is across from Shadyside and across from Fear Street on this remote sort of island. And they're planning to going on this trip with the teacher who's facilitating as a chaperone. However, there's something that pops up in his life, and the teacher has to cancel the trip, unfortunately. This disappoints all of them, especially Della, who is planning on using the trip to basically kind of make amends with Gary, maybe try to get back with him despite Suki's advancements on him. And she thinks that Gary might have shared some feelings and maybe would have tried to get with her too. But that sort of goes out the window when the trip gets canceled. But what ends up happening is that the kids end up deciding, you know what, even though the teacher decided to cancel the trip, all of us can decide to go out to Fear Island anyway and carry out with it. So they all decide, you know what, let's go take a trip out to Fear Island just with us, without the chaperone. We're teenagers, we can have more fun. We don't have to be limited. We can do whatever the hell we want. And they're all sort of speculative, trying to hoping, you know, making sure they don't get in trouble with their parents or anything. And once they figure out everything and get it all sorted, they grab their camping equipment, their tents, their food, and their canoes, and they start canoeing over the lake to Fear Island. And Fear Island is a great setting. I love the descriptions of the crystal clear blue lake, the deep, like the depth of the lake and how kind of ominous it is. The big, you know, the big bright tongue twister, big bright blue sky, the thick foliage, the woods. I just love camping and wood setting. This is not a camping book per se. Sorry, I can't talk. I'm sick, so I'm at like 60% energy and senses right now, so I'm trying to make it through. But I love the setting of the woods. It's very creepy, very ominous, but at the same time, very beautiful. It always makes for a good setting. And although this is not a camp book, it's not dealing with summer camp or anything. It's an overnight camping trip, so they're still out in the woods. And it's, again, very creepy, very ominous. It's a great setting. The way Stine describes how the woods are, you know, the movement of the leaves, the crunching of the leaves, the crunching of twigs, the way the water moves, the way the sky is so bright. And at night you see, you know, obviously in the night sky, all stars and the moon. It's very well written, and it's very sort of intense for the story. And what ends up happening is that as they're enjoying themselves on this Fear Island, Della ends up getting lost and separated amongst this manhunt / paintball thing that they're doing with each other. And as she gets separated, she encounters this stranger. And he's sort of this handsome young guy. I think he was rocking like a leather jacket or something. Attractive young guy, but he's a stranger nonetheless out in the woods. And he basically walks up to her, approaches her, has this very aggressive approach. And it kind of took me out a little bit at first because I'm like, all right, this stranger in the woods that you don't know approaches you and is very aggressive and very direct. I would be immediately freaked out and assume the worst and back up and draw my pepper spray or my gat and just pop. Like, I would be very paranoid. But she is initially paranoid, freaked out, and then she notices that he's very attractive and she goes, you know what, never mind, she is very attractive. You know, for all of you, you know, Valentines out there that are celebrating with your girlfriends or wives or whatever, the complicated yet irrational woman's mind. Am I right, fellas? I don't know why she reacted that way. She went from, oh my God, this is a very aggressive stranger out in the middle of nowhere. He might be trying to kill me, to, he's pretty cute. You know, let him keep talking. I'm like, what? Why? What? You know, it's the mind of a high school girl. But once you get past that, you know, she gets, the encounter becomes more and more intense. She becomes more and more paranoid. And then something happens. She gets into a confrontation. She gets into a kerfuffle, as people say. And something really dark and disturbing happens. And it may or may not involve a crime. And her friends were all witnesses to it. So now they all become alibis, and they all become basically ingrained within this situation, and they have a creepy encounter at night while they have to stay at the overnight, and they end up packing up early and leaving. However, the ghosts of Fear Island, not literal ghost, but the ghost of what happened on Fear Island involving these kids follows them back home, and they end up becoming haunted. And it may or may not be with a stalker. It may or may not be somebody who might have seen what they did on Fear Island and is coming back for revenge, blackmail, whatever it may be. They have no idea, but it's very intense, very creepy, very eerie, and they have to deal with that. And that's what I'm going to talk about the book without spoiling it too much. This book to me gets a 7.3 out of 10. It's a good book. It's a decent read, an above average read, slightly. I love, again, the setting of Fear Island. I love the way the woods are described. I love how creepy it is. The actual situation that Della has with the stranger on Fear Island was very well written, very intense. It is real-life horror involving a stranger, stalker, criminal, whatever. And what she ends up doing to this guy, maybe or maybe not by accident, is a intense and very disturbing written scene. And as her friends see it and they basically become witnesses to this whole crime, you really get a sense of them trying to cover up what's going on. You know, that whole "I know what you did last summer" kind of thing, them being involved within blackmail. And when they head back to Fear Street and try to live out their lives, they're being haunted by what happened. And there may or may not be a new threat, a person who maybe saw what they did, who's blackmailing them, who may be dangerous, wanting to get revenge on them, maybe wanting to kill them. You don't know what's going to happen. You know, it's just that sense of mystery, that sense of thriller, that buildup that is very intense. They have this scene in the second half involving all of the friend group in the outdoors club at their house, at somebody's house. I think maybe Della's house or Gary's house. And somebody's knocking on the door, and they may or may not see shadows in the backyard, and they may or may not be somebody stalking them outside their house and trying to threaten them and scare them, and it's very intense. And again, all of that portion of the book, 60% of this book, is basically great. However, the third act of this book may or may not involve with them going back to the scene of the crime, and that part felt very repetitive. It felt like we were just going back to do the same thing. You get the exact same descriptions, exact same atmosphere of the crime scene as you did in the first act of the book. And then Stine does this reveal as to what's really going on, and it felt just sort of shoehorned and rushed. It didn't feel too logical. It didn't feel too well written. Maybe the people involved are not initially as you thought. You know, at first you think maybe there might be some outside forces, something creepier going on. But what ends up happening is that you get this retcon as to something that happened. And it's just sort of unrealistic, doesn't make any sense, does not have really any explanation behind it. And it just sort of felt like a fumble. And then the ending is just sort of this happy-go-lucky conclusion out of nowhere. And then it just kind of ends the book like that. No real creepiness, no real twist, no real left a suspense for the thriller. It just felt like a rushed ending. It just felt repetitive. And that third act basically tanked the book because it just felt like it was sort of, I guess not all for nothing, but it felt like a disappointing conclusion to this book that was otherwise very creepy, had a great setting, and had a lot of potential. So yeah, this book gets a 7.3 out of 10. I might bump that up accordingly later on, but this depends on how the other Fear Street books are. Again, this one could have been great. It could have been probably up there with Ski Weekend, not quite to the 8.5 score, but maybe this could have been like an 8 out of 10. But this almost got deducted it got deducted half a full point, but it could have gotten almost deducted a whole point just for the fact that, you know, it wasted a lot of potential. It felt like Stine just rushed the ending. It was fumbled, and it could have been something great, but we're never going to know. And that's basically how Fear Street number 3, The Overnight is. Do I recommend you read it? Yes. It's still a good book. Again, the first 2 acts are very creepy, very ominous, a lot of build-up, a lot of thriller, a lot of great stuff in there. And then, you know, you're going to have a fun time for like 60% of this book. And up until the final act, maybe you might enjoy it. It's more so a taste thing for me. But even if you feel like you're disappointed, I feel like there's enough in the book that is creepy and is effective enough that it'll feel worthwhile still to read. It's just not going to be as good as you think it is. But maybe you disagree with me. And if you do, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you enjoyed this book more than I did. Let me know if you actually did not like this book as much as I claimed I did. And let me know, are there any other Fear Street books you want me to review as soon as possible? Do you feel like there's any ones that are immediate reads worth doing? And yeah, if you like that content, feel free to hit that like button down below and hit that subscribe button. We're almost close to 150 subscribers, so if all of you guys can subscribe, we can get past that 150 subscriber mark, and that would be a big achievement. I'll plan something special for that. And I just want to keep building the community. I keep wanting to build up the engagement to my videos and just get that entertainment out there. I want you guys to be entertained. I want these books to have reviews out there that you guys can enjoy. And yeah, that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and deuces. Make sure to show love to your lovers today, show them affection, and I have a box of chocolates for any one of your mamas, so make sure it goes out to them, signed BD Horror.